Um, so let's take a moment to be very intentional and whatever worldly activities we've been doing today, whatever we've been running to and fro, whatever's been going on, let's just take a moment to put those all aside to let ourselves be very intentional that we are here together today. And whether we are, sitting in our bedroom or in our office or in our kitchen, wherever we may be, we are creating a sacred space, right? This is a space for our study, for our practice. And so let's just take a moment to make sure we are fully present together. And with that, let's set a strong motivation that the reason we are here together this afternoon is not simply for our own benefit alone, not simply that we might continue to learn more about this text and improve our own minds, our own lives, but so that we might do those things in order to be of benefit to others. That is our real motivation, right? We're here so we can move closer and closer every day to Buddhahood, and we can do whatever it takes to become Buddhas. That includes study, that includes meditation, that includes practice. And so we are here together this evening, not merely for our own benefit, though we will have benefit in our life as well, but for the purpose of being of service and benefit to others, increasing our wisdom, increasing our compassion, so that we are able to be of more service to others. So, in that way, set a strong motivation. The reason I'm studying together this evening, the reason I chose to attend this class, the reason I'm engaging in this practice is not simply for my own benefit, but so that I might be able to be of more benefit to others. And with that, we'll offer some preliminary prayers. Sorry. Okay. So we'll offer some preliminary prayers. We'll start with refuge and bodhicitta, which we'll do 3 times in Tibetan, then once in English, and then we'll continue with the other prayers in English. Sangye chiran soki chonam la chanchu pardu dagni kyapsu chi dagi jinsogi pe sonam gi chola pinche sangye dru par shok Sangye chiran soki chonam la chanchu pardu dagni kyapsu chi dagi jinsogi pe sonam gi chola pinche sangye dru par shok Sangye chiran soki chonam la chanchu pardu dagni kyabsu chi dagi jinsogi pe sonam gi shola pincher sangye drupar shok. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and the other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginning this time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain unto the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. I will offer a mandala offering. We'll do this once in Tibetan and then once in English. So a mandala offering is an opportunity to visualize the entire universe, and then you purify it so it's free of all faults, all stains, and it becomes this immaculate, pure Buddha realm. And you offer the entire universe in that way to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas on behalf of all sentient beings. And so generally, we offer a mandala at the beginning of class to request teachings, and also to request the blessings of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And then it's also common to offer a mandala at the end of a class, which is called the Thanksgiving mandala. But here we'll just offer it once in the beginning, but once in Tibetan and once in English. So you think that you're offering this both to request teachings and to request blessings from Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. 사시프기 조이싱메도 트라미라블린시 닌덴겐반디 상계시두 미테와히 조그나만당신라 제발요. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon, I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Hedam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. We'll continue with the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. And following this, we'll offer the Heart Sutra as well. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, the supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, to the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings. To you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, to the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings. To you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides and then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then I prostrate. With pure bodies, forms supremely pure, wisdom motion like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like the vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime, pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever devout homage. To all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms atoms in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See, condition things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. And finally, to remind ourselves of the nature of reality, of emptiness, we will offer the Heart Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time, the Bhagwan was dwelling on Masavelcher's mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagwan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to train in the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. No visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. There is no eye element, and so on up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance upon the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as the truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Tayata om gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhiya swaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, trained in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated, and even the Tathagatas will rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that which had been spoken by the Bhagawan. And finally, we'll offer prayer to dispel hindrances. I prostrate to the gathering of the dakinis of the three chakras who abide in the holy yoga of using space. By your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanation, look after practitioners like a mother her only child. Akasamartha Shadara Samaraya Pe. Akasamartha Shadara Samaraya Pe. Akasamartha Shadara Samaraya Pe. Tayata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Swaha. By the power of By the teachings of the three supreme jewels possessing the power of truth, may inner and outer hindrances be transformed. May they be dispelled. May they be pacified. Shintam Kuriya Swaha. May all negative forces opposed to Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to the Dharma, and may all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma. May there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here, right now. Great. Thank you so much. Sorry. So with that, we'll begin our class, or continue our class, I should say. As usual, just a quick reminder of our question policy. I'm always open to questions. I try to save time at the end for a Q&A, but you're welcome to ask questions as we go, especially if there is something that you don't understand. Try to keep your questions on topic, and if you have multiple questions that kind of back up one after another, maybe just ask the most important one, and the others you can save for a later time. And that way everyone has a chance to ask questions. As always, you can email me. Deepti will put my email address in the chat, so you're welcome to email me at any time as well. And also, I don't look at the chat, and I can't really see you if you raise your hand. So if you have a question, you do have to unmute your mic and kind of interrupt me. Otherwise, I won't notice it. Okay. So as we begin looking at the text today, let's remind ourselves of what it means to be an appropriate student, the qualities we want to cultivate in order to ensure that we are doing our best, creating the best conditions for us to engage with this text, with this material, so we can begin the practice of study and contemplation and meditation. And so there are numerous lists of the qualities of a good student or an appropriate student. So today I'll remind us of the qualities, the faults of a broken vessel that we want to try to avoid, right? So we want to avoid being like a pot or a water pot, a water vessel that is upside down, which is to say that we want to make sure our minds are open, that we are receptive, that we are willing to take whatever the Dharma is offering us today. No matter how much water you pour onto an upside down pot, it always stays empty, right? Next, we want to avoid being like a pot that has a crack in it, which is to say we want to make sure we're attentive, that we aren't distracted, that we come to the Dharma with our full attention and mindfulness, allowing our mindfulness to rest on the teaching and to make sure that we don't stray from that, right? In the same way that a pot that has a crack in it, no matter how much water you pour in, it'll always be empty and trickle out. We want to not allow our experience to trickle away, right? We want to exert some effort. And lastly, we want to be like a pot that is not stained. We want to avoid the fault of being like a pot that is stained. So if a pot is stained, no matter how crystal clear and pure the water is that you pour in, it's going to take on the characteristics of whatever was there before, right? In the same way, when we engage in any Dharma study or exploration, we want to make sure that we don't come in with any prejudice or any baggage. We want to be not only receptive and open-minded, but also we don't want to bring in our own mess with us, basically, right? So we want to be free of prejudice. And so let's cultivate these three characteristics, remind ourselves of them. And at the same time, I also find it useful to add to those the three attitudes that we want to adopt, right? So not only are we trying to be open-minded and attentive and without prejudice, but we want to recognize that whenever we study the Dharma, right, we need to adopt an attitude of the long view. We have to recognize that the Dharma and the goal of Buddhahood is not an overnight sensation, right? It's going to take a long time for us to achieve Buddhahood. So we have to have the long view that looks at the big picture, that doesn't just look at our immediate happiness, our immediate satisfaction, but is always looking towards the future to make sure that we are creating the best conditions for us to continue to study and practice in the future so we can achieve Buddhahood. So we always have to have the long view and not be distracted by the immediate needs of this life only. In addition to the long view, or the big picture view, we have to have an expansive view. So we have to recognize that the Dharma has many different aspects, and that just as samsara is complicated and multifaceted, so is the Dharma and the antidotes to overcome all of the obstacles that samsara gives us. So there are many different things we have to study. If we just study one topic only because we like that topic, then that may be helpful for our minds. That will definitely benefit us to some degree, but there are a lot of topics that we have to study. So only studying one isn't going to bring us to liberation, right? It's not going to bring us to Buddhahood. So we have to have an expansive view that recognizes there are many different topics we need to study. And not only do we have to study all of these different topics, we have to learn how to integrate them, right, into a singular practice. And then in addition to the big picture view or the long view and the wide or expansive view, we have to have a relaxed view.
We have to recognize that if we are stressed out and if we are making these expectations of ourselves that we, have a perfect understanding of this material and that we can meditate without any obstacles and that we become Buddhas by tomorrow, then we're just going to burn out, right? Very clearly, we have to have a relaxed view. We have to recognize that we're doing the best we can. We always have to be exerting effort, but realize that we're not going to become Buddhists tomorrow. We have to be relaxed. And in order to hold the long view and the expansive view firmly, we have to have a relaxed view to do that. Because if we don't have the relaxed view and we hold them too tightly, then we become overwhelmed very quickly and we lose the plot. Okay? So we want to cultivate these three views along with the characteristics that allow us to prevent being like a faulty vessel. And I know I repeat these at almost every class or some version of them, right? And on one hand, there are new students who come here and there, so it's beneficial to them. But on the other hand, it's helpful for me to be reminded of these over and over and over again, right? Every time I sit down to study, I try to remind myself of these. This is the kind of thing that you can write them down on a post-it note or something and put them behind your desk or put them with your books or wherever it is that you do your study. Because it's easy to talk about them now. And if I were to say what are the three faults of a faulty vessel, you'll know them right away, right? Most of us who have taken these who have studied before. But when you actually go down to when you sit down to sit on your meditation cushion or to read a Dharma text, do they come to your mind right away? Are they there waiting for you? I can't speak for you, but I can say for me, not often, or not all the time, at least, right? So yes, I know them intellectually, and if I think about them, I'm able to apply them. But I just as easily forget them and don't think about them until I've been studying for an hour or if I finish my meditation session. And then all of a sudden I say, oh, wait, was I being mindful? Was I being non prejudiced? Was I being open minded and attentive? I don't think of them until afterwards. Right. So I know I repeat them a lot, but it's useful to have them repeated. At least it's useful for me. So hopefully it's useful for you as well. You know, I was thinking about what I want to discuss today. And, there's so much going on in the world right now, right? That's undeniable. We can look at the war in Russia and Ukraine that's been going on for years. We look at the war against Palestine by Israel and, American support. We look at the war in Iran, clearly, as well as, American military intervention in Venezuela. They're looking at military intervention in Cuba. It's a lot right now, right? And yet, with all that's going on in the world, all these really gross examples of suffering and violence and injustice, you know, tomorrow here at the monastery, we start our academic program again, and I have to go to debate tomorrow evening. With all those things going on in the world, my mind is focused on debate tomorrow. How selfish is that, right? How can we live with that? Because we have to live in the world. And when we live in the world, we have to accept our place in the world. How do we balance that what I need to do tomorrow, what I need to do to get through the day tomorrow is one thing, and there's so much extraordinary suffering going on out there that's over there. How do I balance those two things? If I want to live a life that is motivated by bodhicitta, a life that is dedicated to helping others, how can I possibly focus on my own needs when my needs are so paltry compared to people that are living in a war zone or people that are starving, people that are unhoused, any of these things, right? And the truth is, it's not easy, right? But we have to live our everyday lives. We have to do so with attention and intention. That's the important thing. We can't ignore the suffering of other people in the world, right? Especially this gross, coarse suffering. It's easy to just make the argument, oh, my goal is to become Buddha. Therefore, I don't have to worry about their temporary worldly suffering. Their worldly suffering that they're experiencing right now is minimal. It doesn't matter. What's more important is that they become free from all the suffering of samsara. And by working on my mind, I am going to do that in the future. To some extent, that's true, right? That's our goal. But that is an excuse as well, or it can become an excuse. We have to try to find a balance how we can make sure we live our everyday lives that, for the most part, are untouched by this extraordinary examples of suffering that I mentioned. How we can live our lives with attention to that suffering, with an intention that we are going to work for their benefit as well as our own, and yet still not be overwhelmed to the point where we can't actually live our lives. Because If our whole mind is focused on the suffering in another part of the world, or even the suffering down the street, how can you go about your everyday activity? How can you go about training your mind? How can you go about doing the things you need to do to give yourself the conditions that allow you to study the Dharma, allow you to meditate, and allow you to improve your own situation in life, in this life and in all future lives, right? You have to find a balance, and it's really hard. It is a really hard thing to do, at least for me. Right? There's so much suffering in the world, and I have to make sure that I'm not running away from it, that I'm not pretending it isn't there. And yet at the same time, I have to use wisdom to examine what are my emotional responses to that suffering? What is my practical reality about what I can do in this life and in this conflict, whether it be poverty in the city that I live in, or whether it be a war on the other side of the world, and what actual options do I have given my resources and my abilities and my opportunities, right? So I can't run away from that suffering, but I have to look at it with wisdom. So first, I use wisdom to examine my emotional response and see, is my emotional response valid, and how is my emotional response helping me, or is it hurting me? If my emotional response is just kind of overload and it causes some sort of paralysis, then that's not beneficial. Even if it is a sense of unease or discomfort or pity or compassion, if what that is doing is not letting me live in the world, not letting me engage in action, and it becomes paralyzing, then that's not helpful. And it's not real compassion, because compassion is always active, right? Compassion is looking for a way to eliminate suffering. So I need to use my wisdom to analyze my own emotional responses. And then on top of that, I have to say, okay, now that I have some sort of handle on where my emotional response is coming from, and I can make sure that my motivation is not based in anger and not some reactionary emotional explosion, but instead is based in an actually constructive way of engaging in the world and recognizing my sources, my own personal experience of suffering, and using that as a way to understand the suffering of others. And my emotions are not just, flying willy nilly, but I have some control over them. Once I've done that, then I say, okay, what can I what is my practical reality? What can I actually do to be of use? If there is something I can do, then I should do that to whatever extent I'm able. I mean, like a pragmatic, worldly type activity. But if there isn't anything I can do in the immediate sense, then that doesn't mean I can't do anything. It doesn't mean I pretend that the suffering isn't real. What it means is I have to find ways to work on my mind in order to eventually bring about benefit to others. Because here's the thing, samsara is uncomfortable, right? Samsara is unpleasant. That's the nature of samsara. It has the nature of being of dissatisfaction. And the Dharma, it gives us the tools to navigate that dissatisfaction or that discomfort. That's the whole point of the Dharma. It's giving us the tools to navigate all of the difficulties of samsara. And so the Dharma allows us to engage with samsara in a meaningful way. It allows us to lessen that discomfort we experience when we're under the control of our deluded minds, right? Blown about by the winds of karma and delusion. That's what Dharma does. It lets us have some sense of control and helps diminish our sense of discomfort in our everyday lives. And most importantly, it helps us chart a course that's actually going to free us from suffering. Right. But what Dharma doesn't do is Dharma does not make that suffering or that discomfort disappear overnight. So when I look at the suffering in the world, on the other side of the world, say, in these global instances of war and other violence, or poverty, or any of the other types of injustice that are around the world, and I have a sense of dis-ease, right? That dis-ease is useful because it makes me want to do something. That disease, that discomfort is useful because it reminds me that this is samsara. Samsara is not easy. And then I use my understanding of the Dharma to find a way to navigate that discomfort. And I trust that eventually the Dharma will lead me and all sentient beings to be free from that discomfort, but it's not going to happen with the snap of my fingers. We often use the analogy of the Dharma being like medicine, right? When we say that if the Buddha is the great physician, then he diagnoses our illness, and the Dharma is the medicine that actually cures the illness. But the thing with medicine is that when you just take a medicine once, your illness doesn't go away, right? You take medicine and it takes time, right? It isn't overnight. You have a whole regimen of medicine, and then maybe the sickness comes back and you have to take a different medicine. So if we continue this analogy, that's helpful because we realize that yes, the Dharma is the medicine that will destroy the illness and the sickness that is samsara, but it doesn't happen overnight. It takes work and it takes time and it takes effort. So when I think about the fact that there is incredible suffering in the world, and at the same time realize that I still here, I am still here living my life, and right now my immediate responsibilities are attending debate tomorrow, then I have to hold both those things at the same time. And remember that maybe I can't do anything in the immediate sense to bring benefit to people that are experiencing the violence of war and so on. But what I can do is make the most of this human life that I have. And that means working to tame my mind, working to develop bodhicitta, and working to benefit others in any way that is open to me. And so for me right now, that means studying here at Sarah J. That means continuing an in-depth exploration of the Dharma in such a way that allows me to share it with others in a meaningful way. But for you, that's going to be something different, right? For you, that's going to be engaging in a spiritual life that has a different contour than mine does. But you can engage in your spiritual life while recognizing that even if it doesn't feel like it is bringing immediate benefit to others on the other side of the world, it is still benefiting. That is how we play our part. And it's not going to make us feel better. It's not going to make our awareness of their suffering go away. But what it's going to do is allow us to recognize that our way of engaging with benefiting others has both long-term and short-term applications. Depending on our resources, our environment, what is available to us, where we are in the world, then we have to analyze using wisdom, using conventional wisdom, what combination of long-term and short-term goals we need to apply, right? It's through transforming our minds that we transform our experiences of suffering and our experiences of the world in general. The world doesn't change around us. I mean, it does, but for my purposes here, it's not the world that's changing. It's our understanding and experience of the world that is changing. And that comes about because we transform our mind. So we transform our mind, that transforms our experience of the world. And by transforming our experience of the world, we transform the way we act in the world, the way we exist in the world, the way we serve others in the world. That comes from having a new and transformed understanding of the world itself. And by transforming the way we act in the world, then we transform the world. That's the truth of it. We transform the world through our action. Our action itself is transformed through our understanding of the appearances that fill our lives. And those appearances, that understanding itself, is transformed through the transformation of our mind by applying ourselves to Dharma and by avoiding non-Dharma, right? So we need to transform our mind if we ever hope to transform the world. That's not saying life is black and white, that you ignore engaging in worldly benefit if that is something you have the resources to do. But it's recognizing that if we really want to help others in a meaningful way, we have to start by transforming our minds. That is what is going to empower us in the most meaningful ways to change the world. And so when we talk about transforming the mind, the truth is all Dharma is mind training, right? The text we're studying today is a mind training text, right? A Lojong text. All Dharma is training the mind because all Dharma is designed to tame the mind, right? The mind itself being overwhelmed by the afflictions. But when we talk about mind training in this context, it's a little bit different, right? Even you can argue that all Dharma is training the mind, so therefore all Dharma, or all Buddha Dharma, I should say, is mind training. That may be true. But when we say mind training, what we mean is a specific type of practice, a specific focus, or a specific way of engaging with the teachings and the phenomena of the world in order to have a specific goal. And so, as I've talked about before, the lens that mind training uses that is uncommon is it looks at everything, our whole experience of the world, through the lens of self-cherishing and how to upend and destroy the self-cherishing mind. So mind training itself is focused on destroying the self-cherishing mind, replacing it with the mind that cherishes others more than myself. So it is a different or an uncommon set of meditation practices and techniques and texts and prayers and ways of engaging the Dharma. But as we can see in this text, it's not a different Dharma, right? Our whole first half of the text so far, we've been studying karma. And in order to study karma, we also have to study, so karma being the law of cause and effect, we also have to study the nature of the mind and how the different afflictions arise and create negative action, create negative karma. And we also have to understand the law, or rather, past and future rebirth, because if we want karma to have any context in which it makes sense, we have to understand that as well. And all that is in service for studying the way the self-cherishing mind causes our suffering, right? So when we think of mind training, it's not separate from the rest of the Dharma. It is exploring the teachings of the Buddha using a specific angle, right, or a specific lens that is focused in one particular direction. But it doesn't exclude anything. It includes all the teachings of the Buddha. And so with that, we can turn to the text we're studying today, or continuing to study. So we've been studying this text for a while, right? This is the Wheel of Sharp Weapons by Dharma. This is the copy we have at the center. I'll put it up on the screen in a moment. So as a reminder, Dharma is an Indian yogi or an Indian scholar who lived 9th/10th century. He was teacher of Atisha, and he was one of Atisha's many teachers. And he taught this to Atisha in India. Atisha brought it to Tibet, and that's where it was recorded the first time. And when Atisha taught it to Dromtonpa, who was his heart disciple. And at that point, it was written down and translated at the same time. So it was not taught in Tibetan, obviously, but the version of it we have, the oldest versions of it we have, are in Tibetan only. And it's an old Tibetan. Like, it's a hard Tibetan to translate. I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, just because some of the translation we have is very strange and very filled with commentary. So I'm going to at least mention it once. But the Tibetan itself is difficult. It's hard to translate, which is why commentaries and contemporary commentaries are also really necessary. But the point of this text, the Wheel of Sharp Weapons, is to teach us how to recognize that the real enemy, the self-cherishing mind, is causing all of our suffering. So the analogy of the Wheel of Sharp Weapons is that, at least in this first part of the text, the Wheel of Sharp Weapons itself is our negative karma that is coming back to cause our suffering or to ripen into our experience of suffering. So all the verses we've studied so far, for the most part, besides the introductory verses, were giving us different examples of suffering that we experience, right? Different types of negative karma ripening. And by giving us those examples, then it reminds us that these are all the ripening of negative karma that we have created. And then the verses would also give one of the potential types of negative actions that caused that karma, that created that karma. And then it would give an antidote, usually a temporary antidote, right? An antidote to ensure that we don't engage in that negative behavior, so we don't create that negative karma, so we don't experience this type of suffering in the future, because we won't have created the causes for it. So in general, that is the section we have already studied before. And the Wheel of Sharp Weapons of the title is our karma coming back. Our negative karma coming back and ripening, and us experience suffering as a result of the negative actions we've done. Now, we finished that section, and moving on, we are now moving on to what is chapter to verse 50. And so from verse 50, for the next 40 verses or so, we are a little more than that, actually, about 50 verses. We are making pleas to Yamantaka, right? Yamantaka being the wrathful aspect of Tsongkhapa, of Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom. So Yamantaka embodies ferocious or wrathful wisdom. And so we want to learn how to destroy our self-cherishing mind. And we recognize that to do that, we have to rely on wisdom, especially the wisdom that realizes emptiness, the wisdom that repels self-grasping. And since the self-cherishing mind is so insidious and causes us such harm without us even realizing it, then we have to take wrathful action in order to overwhelm that great enemy of the self-cherishing mind. So that is why we call upon Yamataka. Right? We can say that there's the what we call the definitive Yamataka and the interpretive Yamataka. So the interpretive Yamataka is the Yamataka that we see, right? With the head of a buffalo and with the flames all around him, carrying all the weapons and so forth. And that is the embodiment of wrathful. That is the embodiment of wrathful wisdom that allows us to destroy the interpretive self-cherishing mind, which is death itself, right? So the interpretive, quote unquote, interpretive self-cherishing mind in this context would be birth, old age, sickness, and death. And the destroyer of that is the interpretive Yamataka. But the definitive Yamataka, is the mind that understands the nature of reality. It's wisdom realizing emptiness. And that wisdom realizing emptiness is the definitive Yamataka that destroys the definitive self cherishing and self grasping mind, which is the cause of all of our suffering and samsara. So we don't have to think of. So Yamataka is represented as this deity, right? As a Buddha who has this physical form that we experience. And we use the symbology of that to understand how we can use the power of our own mind and our own definitive capacity to become, or our own capacity to become definitive Yamataka, to destroy all of the seeds of suffering and all of the seeds of samsara.
Venerable, I have a question.
Sure.
This interpretative and definitive Yamataka that you're talking about, is it like Nirmanakaya and Rupak? Not like that?
Not quite. No, no, no. So we
Okay.
would say that in this case, we think of Yamataka as as a Sambhogakaya, right? An enjoyment body of a Buddha in general, we'd say. And that body itself we've called the interpretive Yamataka. This is also outside of a tantric context, right? We're not thinking in a tantric context right now. We're thinking in a paramita context. And so the definitive Yamataka is you could say the definitive Yamataka is the Yeshichuku, the Dharmakaya, right? Or the Jnana Dharmakaya. But that's not quite what we're pointing at. That's bringing in more of a tantric understanding. So that's a good for an advanced student. That's a good thing to think about. But what we're really focusing on this text is the definitive in terms of the actual heart of Yamataka is the wisdom that destroys emptiness. Excuse me, the wisdom that destroys self-grasping, the wisdom realizing emptiness that destroys self-grasping. And the interpretive is the actual form of Yamataka that we see and that we experience. So we can begin some of these verses and look at them, right? And so we're on verse 50. And so I think...
Venerable.
Yes. Yes.
So the definitive Yamantaka, you said, is the wisdom that destroys self-cherishing.
Self-grasping.
Self-grasping. And what's the interpretive Yamantaka?
The actual Yamantaka. So the
fearful form.
Yeah, the buffalo-headed wrathful deity who we see and we have symbology for. So the actual form that Yamataka takes is the interpretive.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So we'll start with just verse 50, and then the next verses kind of run together, but that's okay. So verse 50 says, and so you have to forgive me a little bit. I say Yamantaka because that's how it should be pronounced in Sanskrit. It's Yama Antaka. Yama is death, and Antaka is destroyer or ending. So it's Yamantaka. But when you hear many people say it, you're used to hearing Yamantaka, which is not quite correct. But I flip back and forth between the two just because I know the proper way to pronounce it, and I know what my mind is used to. So I apologize. And so Yamantaka And so, Yamantaka, spin round with great power the wheel of sharp weapons of good actions now. 3 times turn it around in your wrathful-like aspect, your legs set apart for the 2 grades of truth, with your eyes blazing open for wisdom and means. So here, we're saying, we want to destroy our self-cherishing mind. So, Yamantaka, take the wheel of sharp weapons and spin it around your head 3 times in such a way that you can help us destroy the cause of all of our suffering. And so here we say these 3 repetitions. The reason you spin it 3 times is to represent conventional bodhicitta, which is the bodhicitta we normally talk about, the bodhicitta that is the mind that wishes to become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. That's 1 spin. The second spin is ultimate bodhicitta, which is the realization, the direct realization of emptiness in the mind of an Arya Bodhisattva or an Arya, a Mahayana Arya. And then the third spin is the inseparability of ultimate bodhicitta and conventional bodhicitta, right? When we think of these two, we often talk about the 2 bodhicittas. The reason it's useful in this context especially is because we think of conventional bodhicitta as helping us destroy the self-cherishing mind, and ultimate bodhicitta as destroying the self-grasping mind. So what is the difference between those two? And that's going to come up in the next verses a little bit. We can talk about it now. The self-grasping mind, we say, is the root of samsara. It is the mind that holds the I to be real, that holds all phenomena to be real, to exist in the way it appears to my deluded mind, right? So the mind that grasps at the I as if it really existed the way it appears to me, that's the self-grasping mind. The mind that grasps at all phenomena as if it truly exists the way it appears, that's the self-grasping mind. So that's the fundamental ignorance that causes us to continue to circle in samsara. So that's the root of samsara. The actual root of samsara is the self-grasping mind. Now, the self-cherishing mind is the mind that says my happiness and my well-being is more important than any other sentient beings, prioritizes one's own needs above other sentient beings' needs, right? And in general, we would say that the way we become Buddhas is to get rid of the self-grasping mind. That's the truth, right? Emptiness, the mind that realizes emptiness, the wisdom that realizes the nature of reality, that is the ultimate antidote to the mind of self-grasping. So when we develop a realization of emptiness, that uproots self-grasping, and that is what frees us from samsara. But before we do that, we also want to work on, right? It's not, again, our practice isn't black and white. So it's not like we do nothing else until we get there, or that until we actually develop a realization of emptiness, then we're going to have to just live in the exact same way without mediating our experiences. That's not the case, right? So the self-cherishing mind is uprooted by our development of bodhicitta. The mind that says other beings' happiness is more important than my own, and therefore I'm going to work to benefit others. So here, we see how both of these work together. Ultimately, if we can uproot self-grasping, then by default, that gets rid of self-cherishing, right? Because self-grasping is the root, the ultimate root. But for most of us, it's much harder to really do that, which is why we can work at self-cherishing. And the mind training teachings focus on self-cherishing, recognizing self-cherishing as the cause of all suffering, not because it's the ultimate root of samsara, that's self-grasping, but because we can actually see self-cherishing as it influences our everyday life. You don't have to have been practicing for a long time. All you need is a little bit of an understanding of what self-cherishing is. And then you can look at your own actions, you can look at your own mind, and you can see the influence that self-cherishing has. And you can understand the negative results it has in your immediate life, right? So looking at self-cherishing is a skillful means. It is skillful to do our best to uproot self-cherishing, even knowing still we're going to have to uproot self-grasping as well. Both of those have short-term and long-term benefit to our lives. When we have even a taste of the understanding of emptiness, then that also makes it easier to live our life. It makes it easier to let go of the self-cherishing mind itself, because the taste of understanding of emptiness, the recognition that our experiences are not concordant with reality, that makes it easier to then let go of this desire to always prioritize our own happiness and our own needs, right? So getting rid of self-grasping and working towards eliminating self-grasping helps us eliminate self-cherishing, but eliminating self-cherishing or working towards eliminating self-cherishing also helps us eliminate self-grasping. All of the pieces of the Dharma path fit together, and they are mutually reinforcing. So here, as Yamantaka spins this 3 times, we are saying, help us generate ultimate bodhicitta, help us generate conventional bodhicitta, and help us recognize that ultimately, ultimate bodhicitta and conventional bodhicitta are inseparable. They need to be simultaneously practiced together all the time, right? So that's what this iconography is, of spin your wheel 3 times. And now, Yamantaka, we say your legs are set apart for the 2 grades of truth. So his right leg is bent, and that represents conventional truth. And then his left leg is stretched out, and that represents the ultimate truth. So the ultimate truth is the actual nature of reality, that nothing exists the way it appears to us, that everything is empty of inherent and true existence, that it exists, but it exists by means of convention, not by any ultimate character. That's the ultimate truth, right? Realizing the ultimate truth means to realize emptiness. The conventional truth is the way things appear to us, recognizing that their appearance and their mode of existing are not concordant, but the way they appear to us is conventional truth. So until we have a realization of emptiness, we can only exist by engaging with conventional truth, because that's all we know. But the more we study, the easier it is to recognize that my experience of reality is not the actual way reality exists. Now, my mind isn't trained enough to actually see how reality exists, but it is trained enough to know that I have no reason to have this exaggerated, hyperbolic response, because I'm not responding to reality. I'm responding to a superimposition I have overlaid on top of reality, right? That I've projected onto reality from my confused and deluded mind. So, Yamantaka, his legs, as they're spread apart, represent the 2 truths. And it says, your 2 blazing eyes are wide open, representing wisdom and means. So wisdom and means here, wisdom is, again, the mind, that wisdom realizes emptiness, the wisdom or recognition of the nature of reality, understanding that. And means is compassion and bodhicitta, right? So we have these 2 aspects. And so in the fearful, wrathful body of Yamantaka, we have the inseparability of ultimate bodhicitta and conventional bodhicitta. We have the recognition that our experience of reality is experiencing the conventional truth of reality, and it's through that we're able to get a glimpse of the ultimate truth, the way reality actually exists. And lastly, we are reminded that in order to conquer all of the afflictions that we have, we need both wisdom and skillful means. Skillful means being compassion and bodhicitta, right? So all of that is embodied in his body, right? And so that symbology, that symbolic representation is useful, because if we want to get rid of our self-cherishing mind, we need all these pieces. So with that, we can continue.
Venerable.
Yes.
Venerable, I have a question. Conventional bodhicitta is also called dependent arising, isn't it? Is it?
No, not quite.
No. Oh, okay.
So dependent arising is actually, according to the uncommon tradition of Tsongkhapa, when you realize dependent arising, you realize emptiness. Conventional bodhicitta is whenever we say bodhicitta, what we're usually referencing is conventional bodhicitta, the mind that wishes to become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So that and conventional bodhicitta are the same thing. Ultimate bodhicitta is the mind that realizes emptiness directly, that exists in the continuum of a Mahayana Arya. And so ultimate bodhicitta is closer to dependent arising. They're not the same thing, because you can recognize dependent arising, but have not yet achieved ultimate bodhicitta, right? Because ultimate bodhicitta, you have to have a direct realization of emptiness. So before you even enter into the Mahayana path, you can have a realization of dependent arising, right? That's just recognizing emptiness in general.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So continuing. Bearing your fangs, the 4 great opponents, devour the foe, our cruel, selfish concern. With your powerful mantra of cherishing others, demolish this enemy that is lurking within. So here, the 4 great opponents, right, are the 4 opponent powers. So we talk often about, if we want to learn how to purify, what negative actions we've created in the past. We engage in purification practices. The strongest way to engage in purification is to engage in a practice that combines all 4 opponent powers, right? So that's the power first of refuge, or the power of reliance, rather, the power of the power of reliance, the power of regret, the power of remedy, and the power of I forget what the word we use.
Resolution.
Resolve. These aren't the actual literal translations, but the FPMT likes to have these interpretations where they all begin with R, which is supposedly make them easier to remember, but then I forget them. So, whenever we do to make it easier for ourselves, it doesn't always. So the first one, the power of reliance. The power of reliance is developing a mind of refuge, recognizing the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as the authentic sources of refuge and the only authentic sources of refuge that will free us from the suffering of samsara, recognizing the 3 jewels, and also developing a mind of bodhicitta. The reason this is called the power of reliance, right? Refuge and bodhicitta, because we need to rely upon those sentient beings against which we've created negative karma in order to purify that negative karma. So all of our negative karma is either created in relation to the Buddhas and the Dharma, or it's in relation to other sentient beings, right? And so the analogy they often give is if you fall down and you need to get up, in order to actually get off the ground, you push off of the floor. So the floor itself is what caused you pain when you fell down onto the floor and hurt yourself, but you need to push on the floor. You rely upon it in order to lift yourself back up. So in a similar way, when we engage in negative action that is in relation to the Buddha, Dharma, or Sangha, we need to then take refuge as a source of reliance in order to help purify that negative karma. And when we create negative karma that is independent or in relationship to other sentient beings, we need to then develop a mind of bodhicitta, the wish to benefit those sentient beings, as a form of reliance upon which to purify that negative karma, right? So the power of reliance is generating a mind of refuge and a mind of bodhicitta. And then the second power is the power of regret. So the power of regret is the recognition that our actions are non-virtuous, that they cause harm to ourselves and others, right? And therefore, developing the wish not to wish to repeat those actions again. That's the mind of regret. Then the mind of the power of the remedy. So any virtuous action can serve as a remedy to purify negative action, but there are certain practices that we recognize as being especially powerful. The most common one is the Vajrasattva recitation, but there are many others. So the remedy is actually, after you've developed a mind of reliance and mind of regret, actually intentionally engaging in virtuous activity for the purpose of remedying or purifying whatever negative actions you have done, right? And then the power of resolve is then promising to not engage in those negative actions again in the future. So it's like tying the bow on top of the package, right? It's saying not only have I recognized that I've done these negative actions in the past, I've caused harm to myself and others, but I am going to make sure I don't engage in I'm going to remedy whatever harm I've done in the past. I'll make up for it, and I will not continue to cause harm in the future. So those 4 opponent powers are a common part of our practice, right? And we can think of how they are incorporated into everything we do, right? Recognizing we need to rely upon those beings and those entities that we've caused harm to in order to purify or mediate that harm. That we need to actually have a mind of regret for negative actions we've done in the past. That we need to then, once we develop that regret, do something about it. Just feeling bad about something is not useful if it doesn't motivate us to engage in virtuous activity. And then we have to try to protect our future, safeguard our future by by adopting a resolve not to continue causing harm. These are represented in Yamantaka's fierce body by his 4 fangs, right? His 4 fangs represent these 4 opponent powers. He's called the devourer of the foe here, right? But what's the foe? Our own selfish concern. Now, the word here in the Tibetan is daksin, which is self-grasping. So it's not self-cherishing. The real foe is self-grasping. So since he is the embodiment of this ferocious wisdom, realizing the nature of reality, realizing emptiness, then the foe that he is conquering most immediately through his ultimate bodhicitta, right, is the self-grasping mind. And then with your powerful mantra of cherishing others. So here, the way with your powerful mantra of cherishing others, demolish the enemy that is lurking within. So here, the enemy lurking within is the self-cherishing mind. And the way you demolish the self-cherishing mind is by working to benefit others. And now he uses the term your powerful mantra. And so one of the most common Tibetan etymologies of the Sanskrit word mantra is that it comes from the word manas, which means mind, and tr, which means protection or protector, the verbal root tr. So anything that protects your mind is a mantra in this regard, right? So here, since you have the powerful means of protecting the mind, you use that to destroy the foe. The foe itself, the mind that cherishes others more than oneself, is the powerful mantra that protects the mind. And using that, you destroy self-cherishing, who is your real enemy. Okay? So continuing with 52. We'll do 52 and 53 together because they go together. Just so you know, if you look at a different translation, these verses get numbered differently around here. I'm not sure how they numbered them this way. The verses are a little strange, or the numbering is a little strange. So if you are looking at a different translation and trying to compare verses, after verse 51 or 52, the numbering doesn't line up. So, frantically running through life's tangled jungle, we are chased by the sharp weapons of wrongs we have done, returning upon us. We are out of control. The sly, deadly villain, the selfishness that is in us, deceiving ourselves and all others as well. Capture him, fierce Yamantaka. Summon this enemy and bring him forth now. Batter him, rip out the heart of our grasping for ego, our love for ourselves. Trample him, dance on the head of this treacherous concept of selfish concern. Tear out the heart of this self-centered butcher who slaughters our chance to gain final release. So it's pretty intense, right? This is saying if we're going to be evoking this wrathful deity, then we're going to use language that is equally wrathful, right? If we're saying that the self-cherishing mind is the enemy that causes all suffering, then we can't go after that enemy with kid gloves, right? We have to take the gloves off and go after him, all the way. And that's what this language does. So here, frantically running through life's tangled jungle, right? That is to say, living in samsara. Samsara itself recognizing being a jungle filled with poison, right? Or a mire, a swamp. As we go about our everyday experience, circling in samsara, we are chased by the sharp weapons of the wrongs we have done, as we've talked in the past. So we experience suffering circumstances as a result of the negative karma we've done in the past. They return to us and we are out of control. We are existing, blown about by the winds of karma and delusion, right? So we are out of control because we have not tamed our minds. And the sly, deadly villain, this selfishness that is in us, it deceives ourselves and it deceives others. That's the important thing to remember. Our self-cherishing mind doesn't just hurt others by saying my happiness is more important than their happiness. It also hurts us because it's lying to ourselves and it's causing us to engage in harmful activity, thinking that it's beneficial activity. So since this sly, deadly villain, it exists within us, deceiving us and deceiving our others, please Yamantaka, please fierce wisdom, capture him, summon this enemy forth right now. And when you summon him, batter him, rip out his heart, right? So we don't have any patience with the real enemy being the mind that cherishes others more than ourselves, our self-cherishing mind. It's inappropriate to cultivate patience with regard to the inner enemy. Now, patience is appropriate with regard to the outer enemy, right? Anyone that causes us harm. The only appropriate way to react to an external enemy is with patience and love, right? Not anger. But when we're looking at the inner enemy, that's the actual enemy, the enemy that's actually causing our suffering, then we can't be patient with that enemy. We need to destroy that enemy. That enemy is the self-cherishing mind. And so here it says, okay, batter him, rip out the heart of our grasping for ego, right? That's our self-grasping, and our love for ourself. That's our self-cherishing. So here it's recognizing both of them, self-grasping and self-cherishing, as our enemy. So in this text, he's combining both of them. Now, in general, as we said, in most mind training texts, it won't mention self-grasping as often as it's going to mention self-cherishing, because the purpose of mind training as a genre, if we want to call it that, is to really help us defeat our self-cherishing mind. But here, especially since we're relying on ferocious and wrathful wisdom, then we recognize that relationship between self-grasping and self-cherishing. So this text is recognizing that relationship and saying both of those are our enemy. And depending on what practice we're doing, one of them may be more vibrant and immediate than the other, right? But they're both our enemy. We need to engage in the practices to defeat them both. And now, this last line, or these last two lines, are going to be repeated for the next 50 verses. So we'll talk about them just briefly, because they're this translation is so strange. So here we say, trample him, dance on the head of this treacherous concept of selfish concern. Tear out the heart of this self-centered butcher who slaughters our chance to gain final release. That's 2 lines. All of their lines, they make them double as long. And the reason is this copy of the text we have, right, that we're using, this translation. This translation was translated 50 years ago, we should point out, 1976. And it is translated by students at the Library of Tibetan Archives, Tibetan Works and Archives. The primary English language students are Alexander Berzin and Jonathan Landau, who are both incredible translators and have done a lot of great translation work. And then Geshe Noen Dargye was giving a commentary on this text. And the translation is based on his commentary. And then Sharpa Tuku and Kamlan Tuku were also helping assist in the translation process. So I don't doubt for a moment the accuracy of the meaning of this translation, okay? But the words are not quite the same words as the actual Tibetan. The translation here is based on it's an interpretive translation based on the commentary. And I'm not going to repeat this over and over again. I'm just going to say it now because this line, these 2 lines are repeated over and over again. So I'm going to say it now. The meaning is correct. The meaning is important, and they have illustrated the meaning in a way that's useful, at least for English language speaking minds. But it's not word for word exact. So trample him, dance on the head. You'll look at other translations and they say rant and rave on the head, or roar and thunder on the head. And the word in Tibetan is chemse. And that means like the sound of a crashing cymbal, right? It means making this really loud noise. And it says chemse on the head of the namtok, of the deluded conceptual minds. That's all it says. On the namtok. I think actually, do I have the... I thought I had the Tibetan available. Maybe I do. Yeah, so it says, where is it? Right here, right? So verse 52 here. Puje tokbe gola chemse chem. So chemse chem. So thunder and roar crash upon the head of these harmful conceptual minds, right? And then dradak sheme nyingla maraya. So maraya is Sanskrit. So even though the text is in Tibetan, it actually ends in the Sanskrit line, right? And so here he says, tear out the heart of this self-centered butcher who slaughters our chance to gain final release. What it actually says is, Marya means, it comes from the verbal root mur, which means to kill. So engage, like cast a mortal strike at the heart of our actual enemy, who is the butcher, who is the self, or the conception of a self. And now he has elaborated that here to say, tear out the heart of the self-centered butcher who slaughters our chance to gain final release. But a more word-for-word translation is, cast a mortal blow against the heart of the butcher who is the actual enemy, which is the conception of I. Okay. The meaning, the feeling of the meaning is the same, but I can't help trying to explain some of the discrepancies, only because if you look at any other translation of the text, it's going to look a lot different than this. So I want to give you a little bit of an understanding where that translation is coming from. Okay. And then...
Venerable.
Yes.
Venerable. So this is just so intense.
Yeah.
And if one is not anywhere near, like one is just lowly, like a beginner, then one can feel quite I mean, sort of
Yeah, I understand. So,
just
there's a reason that the mind training teachings were kept secret, right? When Atisha first gave the mind training teachings in 10th century in Tibet, he taught them to Dromtonpa primarily, and only a few students are taught in private teachings, in private classes. And then Dromtonpa taught them privately. And then it wasn't until uh, Geshe Langri Tampa wrote the eight verses of mind training, and that they were started to be taught more publicly. So there were like 3 or 4 generations of teachers who taught them secretly or only to select students for this very reason, that in general, the mind training teachings can feel ferocious, they can feel overwhelming, they can, be quite intense. And it was only later that it was decided that this can benefit if taught more broadly. So, that's part of the reason that we're doing these teachings as our Saturday night class and not our Sunday morning class, is that you have to have some understanding of the Dharma in order to make these teachings make sense. If you just come to these teachings and you don't have any other background, then they can really be overwhelming. But if we come to these teachings knowing how the law of cause and effect works, come to them knowing how the mind works, how the mental afflictions work, how ignorance and self-grasping and self-cherishing cause all of our suffering, then these teachings are put into a context that shows why this ferocious and intense attitude is a useful attitude to have when we're facing down our self-cherishing mind, right? And the reason these teachings are so intense is because the enemy is that destructive. And so it's to help rally your spirit, right? To help get you in the mood is they use this intense language. Now, the rest of this, after these next few verses, we stop explicitly discussing Yamantaka, so they get a little tamer. But these 2 lines, trample him, dance on the head of this treacherous, constant, selfish concern, tear out the heart of the self-centered butcher who slaughters our chance to gain final release, those continue for the next 50 verses. Those repeat. Because we need to be reminded constantly. And if we're just basing it on this English, if we don't even worry about the Tibetan, but this English, if we think of the actual enemy, that is our self-cherishing mind, right? That's the real enemy here. The treacherous concept of self-concern, that is what's causing all of our suffering. So we can't be patient with that real inner enemy. We have to trample him. We have to dance on his head. We have to do anything we can to defeat him. And when it says tear out the heart, it's saying don't give any ground to the mind that says the I is real, and to the mind that says me and mine are more important than you and yours, or they and theirs, right? As soon as we give any leeway, saying sometimes it's okay to have self-cherishing, sometimes it's okay to follow the self-grasping mind, as soon as we do that, then we're heading towards non-Dharma. We're engaging in a worldly life, not a spiritual life, and we're only creating causes for suffering. So the intensity of these verses can be overwhelming, but they can also be inspiring. And that's why we don't encourage mind training for people that are brand new, that are still understanding the mind, still understanding all of the different elements of the stages of the path, seeing how the different things fit together. But those of us who are here together today have some understanding. We can look at this language, which seems so extreme, and recognize that this language is being used symbolically to help inspire us, to help exemplify just how destructive the self-cherishing mind is, and to make us see the urgency of the need to remove the self-cherishing mind from our lives, right? But I agree, it's intense. Now, for me, that's useful. Like, I like that language. And you're going to see as it gets the next couple of verses, they very much look at the way the self-cherishing mind operates in our lives and points the finger at us and says, you think you're doing something spiritual, but you're really doing the opposite. The self-cherishing mind is a liar, it's deceptive, right? As we said, it deceives us and it deceives others. So those moments of deception are pointed out in the next verses, which for me is really helpful. It's also helpful because it is built upon the whole first half of this text, right? We have to remember in this text specifically, we're 50 verses in. We're almost halfway done. So the whole first half of the text is looking at how our minds of self-cherishing caused us to engage in different types of harmful activity that created negative karma. That negative karma then ripened as experiences of suffering. So the first half of the text was was using our experience of suffering, which is to say the result, as a way to highlight the cause and then an antidote. But the main teaching, or the main heart of that first half, was talking about karma. It was showing the result, right? It was showing this is the result of having engaged in harmful activity. So even though the verses did teach us the cause and they taught us the remedy. The heart of those verses were teaching us about the result itself. And now that we have that taste of the result, we understand what we're looking for. We're understanding the different ways that we experience suffering. Now this next section is saying, okay, now we're going to look at the actual cause. We're going to look at the self-cherishing mind, and that's what's going to be the priority in this back half of the text, right? So this really vibrant language is coming at a point in the text where we've already built up an understanding of how the self-cherishing mind causes us to engage in negative actions, which we experience as suffering. And now that we've become familiarized with what that suffering may or may not look like, then we're more motivated to actually defeat the causes of that suffering, which is self-cherishing, the ultimate cause, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's important. It's really important. As we go through this, we have to remember. Well, I'll get to that in a second. When we get to the next verses. Yeah, we can continue with 54 and 50. We'll go with 54 and 55 because then that's when it changes tones. So 54 says, "Hum hum, show all your powers, O mighty protector. Za za, tie up your enemy, do not let him loose. Pei pei, set us free by your might, O great Lord of Death. Cut cut, break the knot of self-interest that binds us inside." So here, appear, Yamantaka, O wrathful protector. I have further entreaties to make of you still. This sack of 5 poisons, of mistakes and delusions, it drags us down into the quicksand of life's daily toil. Cut it off, rip it to shreds. So these are all the verses from 50 to 55 that are making entreaties to Yamantaka directly. So they're describing him and they're saying, this is my problem. So please, help me take care of it. So here we have these Sanskrit syllables, right? And the repetition is all done for emphasis, right? We had it earlier as well. And even with the word trample him, this repetition is done for emphasis. So hum, we say this is representing the 2 bodhicittas, right? The term hum, especially in a tantric context, it kind of embodies this union. And so here it's saying hum, use your 2 bodhicittas, which is all of your powers. Za. So really, this is the Sanskrit letter ja. The Tibetans pronounce it za, and this means summon. It represents a hook in many ways. So this hook is to say summon the enemy here, right? We don't ignore it. We bring the enemy right in front of us. We don't pretend it doesn't exist. So call the enemy forth, and then pei. So again, in Sanskrit, it's pat. It's the sound associated with lightning or thunder. It's also associated with crushing or destruction. So here it's saying, now that you've summoned the enemy, you brought him forth, destroy the enemy, right? Set us free by destroying or cutting through the enemy. Cut, which is saying that, it's actually Tibetan here, not Sanskrit. Shik. It's saying that self-interest is this knot, is this fetter that ties us to samsara, that keeps us locked away in prison, right? The thing that keeps us immobile and keeps us, shackled is our self-cherishing mind. So you need to use your powers, which is to say your understanding of the nature of reality and your great compassion and bodhicitta, to destroy the self-cherishing mind, which is the fetter, the chains that bind us to samsara. So, O peer, O Yamantaka, O wrathful protector, I have further entreaties to make of you. So that's what the next verses are going to be. The sack of 5 poisons, of mistakes, delusions, it drags us down into the quicksand of life's daily toil. So here, the quicksand of life's daily toil is to say that samsara itself is, like I said, it's a swamp, it's a mire, it is quicksand. And the worldly life is nothing but the nature of suffering, right? That's what it means by being samsaric. It may be pleasant suffering on occasion, right? But that is what it means to be in the nature of samsara, is to be in the nature of suffering. That's why it's referenced as a swamp or as quicksand or as a mire, a quagmire. What keeps us sunk into this quagmire is, here it says, the sack of 5 poisons, mistakes, and delusions. Now this is translated differently, This is interpreted differently here by different teachers. So sometimes it says the 5 poisons here are referencing the 5 aggregates. So as samsaric beings, we have for these 5 aggregates, right? Form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness. Those 5 aggregates are what we then superimpose the idea of a self on, right? So we talk about the 5 aggregates. So sometimes it's saying that my body itself, as a samsaric being, is made up of the 5 aggregates. So the 5 aggregates themselves are, we say, Zakshe, Nyelengi, Pumpo. So Zakshe means they're contaminated. We have the 5 contaminated aggregates because we're samsaric beings. So the fact that we exist with the most subtle type of suffering, right? The suffering of compounded phenomena, the suffering of all pervasive suffering, that itself is causing us to suffer, and that is dragging us down into the quicksand of samsara, along with mistakes and delusions. Now, other interpretations say that what they mean here by the 5 poisons is we are a sack of 5 poisons. The sack is our body that is made up of the 5 aggregates, but the 5 poisons are the 5 root delusions, right? And so the 5 root delusions, we actually say there are 6 root delusions, but here it's putting off the delusion of wrong view and saying that the delusions of attachment and anger and ignorance, along with the delusions of pride and afflicted doubt, those are the 5 delusions that is being referenced as the 5 poisons. And those are all the delusions that we keep in our mind as samsaric beings as well. So either one of those / both of those are accurate understandings of this verse. It's just recognizing that we are samsaric beings. And because we're samsaric beings, we are motivated by worldly thoughts, which is to say by our ignorance and by our self-cherishing mind, right? By our negative karma ripens as our clinging to samsara. And so all of our afflictions, all of our self-cherishing, all of our self-grasping, those are what keep us in samsara. So please destroy all of them, right? This sack of 5 poisons, this body of mind that is filled with delusion, destroy it, right? Which isn't to say destroy my body, but it's just saying destroy all of the delusions that keep me stuck in samsara, okay? But again, the reason, so I've read a number of commentaries to try to make sure I was clear on this, right? And literally, I've read at least 4 different interpretations of this line. And if you look at the Tibetan, it's because the Tibetan is very cryptic. Like the Tibetan doesn't have a lot of grammar. It's in verse. It's very short. So it's understandable that there's a lot of different meanings you can pull out of this. And that's fine. It's fine that one verse can be interpreted different ways. And those different interpretations can both be true at the same time, right? That's an important part of understanding how the Dharma works, understanding how the Buddha taught. Now, obviously, these verses weren't taught by the Buddha directly, but the Buddha taught in such a way that the teachings meet the needs of the student that was receiving those teachings. And so that is how we can have teachings, both by the Buddha and by other Indian commentators and Tibetan commentators, that at one moment might mean one thing, but from a different light or for a different student means something else. And both of those things can be valid, right? Not necessarily contradicting, which is why we have to use our own development of wisdom to make sure we understand not only the meaning of the text, but how that text applies to us, how that teaching applies to us, how we can incorporate it into our everyday life. And we'll find that the more we practice, that might change, right? You know, the Kadampas say you should take every single teaching as if it were a personal instruction. So what that means is you have to develop a relationship with every single teaching and understand what that means for you now. And obviously, there is some core meaning to these teachings. They can't mean whatever we want. We can't just be totally interpretive and make up our own meaning. But it means that sometimes the meaning isn't going to be static, right? Or the meaning might unfold and have different levels of understanding depending on where we are in our practice, where we are in our life at that moment. So we might receive a deeper level of meaning the more we engage with a text. And so having a verse like this that, regardless of the translation, looking at Tibetan commentaries, I've seen different Tibetan geshes give different interpretations of this text, or of this verse specifically. But they're all pointing at the same thing, right? And that's the important part. Okay. So the next verses, basically from verse 56 all the way through verse 90 or so, are going to be verses that are showing us how the self-cherishing mind is causing us to engage in harmful actions. So instead of showing us the result, like is what was happening in the first half of this text, it's showing the cause itself, right? How is the self-cherishing mind deceiving us? How is it causing us to engage in negative actions? How are we living lives of hypocrisy because we're chasing the self-cherishing mind and we don't even realize it, right? So starting with verse 56. We are drawn to the sufferings of miserable rebirths, yet, mindless of pain, we go after its cause. Trample him, dance on the head of this treacherous concept of selfish concern. Tear at the heart of this self-centered butcher who slaughters our chance to gain final release. So here, we are drawn to the sufferings and miserable rebirths. What that means is not drawn as in attracted to, but we're carried to them. We're brought to all the sufferings of the three lower realms. It's the Tibetan here says the three lower rebirths, right? This also can mean the miserable rebirths of the form realm and the formless realm and the desire realm. So all the realms within which sentient beings exist. Or it can mean the three lower realms of the animal rebirth, hungry ghost rebirth, and a hell being rebirth. Either way, due to our negative actions, we're carried to those rebirths and we experience nothing but suffering, right? Different types of suffering. However, instead of thinking about that suffering, what we do is we run after the causes that will cause us to be reborn in those miserable states of existence. So here, where it says, mindless of the pain, we go after its cause, right? We go after means we seek out, right? We search for, we adopt the causes that are only going to bring us suffering. So even though we recognize that lower rebirth is nothing but suffering, right? Even if we're focusing just on animal, prita, and hell being, rebirth, it's nothing but suffering. We know that intellectually. And yet, instead of engaging in actions that will cause us to never again be reborn there, we engage in non-virtue. We run after suffering and we grab it with both hands and we call it happiness. And because of that, we are heedless of the suffering we know is existing in the lower realms, and we seek it out by running after non-virtue, by allowing our self-cherishing mind to engage, to motivate us to seek out worldly happiness only, right? So as we seek out worldly happiness, as we allow the self-cherishing mind to guide our actions, all we're doing is grabbing on to suffering and calling it happiness. All we're doing is creating the causes for even more and more suffering in the future. So that's what this verse is saying, is that we know of the suffering of the lower realms. We understand how karma and negative actions cause us to be reborn there. And yet, knowing that, even knowing that, we forget about that suffering of the lower realms and seek out our own worldly happiness now, ignoring the fact that all we're doing is creating the causes for that intense suffering in the future. So that is the self-cherishing mind deceiving us, right? It's the mind employing ignorance as a way, self-cherishing, employing ignorance as a way to perpetuate our suffering. And then we continue. We have high expectations of speedy attainments, yet we do not wish to work at the practice that's involved. We have many fine projects that we plan to accomplish, yet none of them are ever done in the end. Trample him, dance on the head of our treacherous concept of selfish concern. Tear the heart of the self-centered butcher who slaughters our chance to gain final release. Right? So here, and actually this verse, we can go with the next one because they go together. Our wish to be happy is strong at all times, yet we do not gather merit to yield this result. We have very little endurance for hardship and suffering, yet ruthlessly we push for the things we desire. Okay? These are all showing how we engage in laziness. We seek out laziness. We employ laziness. And then we think we're doing the opposite, right? And this laziness is coming from our self-cherishing mind. So the first one, so there are 3 examples we get, right? Or no, 4. The first one, we have high expectations of speedy attainments, both worldly attainments and spiritual attainments. We think that if I just go to class for a month, then I'm going to be able to meditate and I'm going to, be able to levitate in the air and walk through walls. We hope to achieve these things quickly, right? Or even worldly attainments that if I, we can think of many things where we have expectations, really high expectations that we're going to take a shortcut and get the same result. But we don't put in the work we need to actually experience the result we want, right? We procrastinate and we avoid engaging in work that's difficult, yet we want the results that would come from that work. So we're hoping to get these oversized results with as minimal work as possible. So we can see very easily how that doesn't work out in our worldly affairs, right? Think of any big goal you have, and you recognize that it takes effort and energy and hard work to achieve that goal. And so just hoping to get the best result, but not putting in the effort, you're not going to get it. It's the same for our spiritual practice. We hope to have different realizations, whether they be realizations of the stages of the path or any sort of spiritual understanding. And yet we don't put in the work to study, contemplate, and meditate. So if we don't put in the work, how are we going to achieve the result? So that's laziness, right? That is laziness either procrastinating from engaging in virtue, or it is laziness seeking out non-virtue and finding delight in non-dharma. And then similarly, we have many fine projects that we plan to accomplish, yet none of them are ever done in the end. So we have all these big ideas, all these big plans, but we allow ourselves to be distracted. We allow the worldly pleasures to pull our attention away, right? To divert us away from our goals, whether they be worldly goals or spiritual goals, both, right? And again, the self-cherishing mind is the important thing to remember. The self-cherishing mind ultimately is causing all of our experiences of suffering, and it's harming us in the big picture, right? In a spiritual sense, it's causing us to experience suffering, to be reborn in suffering over and over and over again. Yet it also harms, so it's like a spiritual type of harm, we could say. But there's also worldly harm. If all of our life is devoted to seeking out my own happiness at the expense of others' happiness, prioritizing my own needs at the expense of others' needs, that doesn't actually bring about temporary worldly happiness even. It might bring about occasions of it, but ultimately it's making us more dissatisfied when we don't achieve all of this worldly desire, all of our worldly desires. So self-cherishing, not only does it prevent us from achieving actual liberation from samsara, but it makes us have worldly suffering as well, immediate worldly suffering in this life, not just create a negative karma that will ripen in the future. So it deceives us in that way. So when we say we have these many fine projects we hope to accomplish, we can think of all of the many both spiritual projects and worldly projects that we hope to complete, and yet we find ourselves distracted, right? We find ourselves, not going through with all of these ideas. And that's because, again, laziness, that is motivated by the self-cherishing mind. So we talk about laziness, right? There are three types of laziness that we identify in general. The first one is the laziness of procrastination. That's the one we are most commonly associated or knowledgeable of. So when we think of laziness, that's what we think about. It's procrastination, putting something off, not recognizing the urgency of this valuable human life and using it in the best way possible, putting something off. But the other types of laziness, the second one, is the laziness of self-deprecation. So it's a laziness that says, I'm not good enough to accomplish something, right? That those vows seem really intense. I don't know if I can keep them all perfectly, so therefore I'm not going to take them right now. Or I'm not good enough to understand emptiness. I'm never going to, so I'm not going to bother even trying to meditate on it because it's too complicated for me. I'm too much of a dummy, right? That is the laziness of self-deprecation. It is the self-cherishing mind uses laziness as an excuse to avoid engaging in meaningful Dharma practice and study. So it's the laziness of self-deprecation. Putting ourselves down and using that as an excuse to not pursue a meaningful spiritual life, right? And the third type of laziness that we need to uproot and avoid is the laziness that is excited for non-Dharma activities, right? So on the outside, it looks like the opposite of laziness. It looks like energy. It looks like excitement. It looks like seeking out and doing all these things. But it is actively avoiding virtue. So it's the laziness that seeks out non-virtue or the laziness that seeks out non-Dharma activities is a type of laziness because it is avoiding engaging in virtue and avoiding living a spiritual and meaningful life. So those three types of laziness they are like foot soldiers for the self-cherishing mind, right? The self-cherishing mind tells us that if we procrastinate till tomorrow, then we'll have happiness today, then it's worthwhile. We should do it. The self-cherishing mind says, oh, it's so difficult to understand emptiness. You aren't smart enough. Don't waste your time. There are so many vows you have to keep. If you take the bodhisattva or tantric vows, you're not going to be able to keep track of all of them. You're not going to be perfectly pure in all of your vows. Don't bother doing it. You aren't able to. Just put it to the side, right? Here, do this other thing instead. Find out, find out this worldly delight and seek that out. That's something you can do. Those are the self-cherishing mind lying to us, using laziness as a weapon. So laziness itself is an afflicted mind, but it is a foot soldier of the self-cherishing mind that is causing only suffering, right? Our wish to be happy is strong at all times, yet we don't gather the merit to achieve or to yield this result. So we want to be happy, But instead of engaging in the virtue and accumulating merit, we do the opposite, right? Instead of trying to accumulate all the causes that will bring about our happiness, we go about accumulating the causes that bring about our dissatisfaction. And then we say, how come I'm not happy yet, right? We have little endurance for hardship and suffering, and yet ruthlessly we push for the things we desire. So again, we don't want to experience difficulties, but we want to experience the results of difficulties. We run after our samsaric delights with both hands or with our arms wide open. We grab onto them. We're willing to engage in all sorts of difficulty, worldly difficulty, to achieve those worldly delights. But we're not willing to engage in any sort of difficulty if it means practicing virtue, right? So that's what these verses are reminding us, that our self-cherishing mind is acting through our laziness, and it is causing us to do the opposite of what we want. We want to have great results, but we don't want to do the work to get them. We want to be happy, but we don't want to accumulate the causes for happiness. We want to be successful in worldly and spiritual matters, but we don't want to put in the effort that we would take to complete our goals or to complete our projects. These are all due to the self-centered butcher, as it says, right? The butcher that actually destroys our happiness, the self-cherishing mind that is the actual enemy. The self-cherishing mind that can only be defeated by prioritizing others' happiness more than ourselves, and by understanding that the self-cherishing mind itself doesn't exist the way it appears to us, that the self-cherishing mind is so desperately trying to please doesn't exist the way it appears to us. So by understanding that the I doesn't appear the way it exists, and that the mind that prioritizes that I doing so at the expense of others doesn't actually bring about happiness, we defeat the self-cherishing mind, we defeat the self-grasping mind, because those are what are causing our suffering. Those are what are causing us to continually cycle in samsara. If we want to do, we have time for one more verse. So continuing with 59. Right? Yeah, we're on 59. With comparative ease, we develop new friendships. Yet, since we are callous, not one of them lasts. We are filled with desire for food and fine clothing, yet failing to earn them, we steal and we scheme. Okay? So again, this is pointing out that we are like social butterflies, and we're willing to adopt people into a circle of friends, but we don't actually do any of the work to maintain those friendships. We don't do the work to investigate if these are worthwhile friendships. So that means not being associated with people that are encouraging us to engage in non-virtue, right? Which are called harmful friends. We don't want to do that work. We just want the luxury and comfort of having people around us. In the same way, we don't seek out, we don't do the diligence we need to properly rely on our teachers, right? So developing new friendships not only means worldly friendships, but it also means spiritual friendships, so with Dharma siblings, and it means relationships with teachers, people that'll help instruct you in the Dharma. We are attracted to the benefits of those relationships, but we don't do the work to maintain those relationships. And because of that, we're callous, right? We only think of ourselves, and so those relationships don't last. Whether that's a worldly relationship or a Dharma sibling, spiritual relationship, or a relationship with a teacher, right? If we're only focused on our own needs, then of course those relationships won't last. Yet we accumulate them as if we were, counting beads on a mala, on a rosary.
Venerable, what does don't last? None of them lasts, meaning what? We lose those friendships? We
Yeah, it
might
means,
not too, right? I mean,
well, no, of course we have experiences in our life where we have friends that have who we've treated poorly, and they've maintained friendships with us, right? So we have that experience. But what this is
Yeah.
really pointing out, so that's true. Like we have counter examples of this. But ultimately it's the saying, if we go about seeking out the happiness, the worldly or spiritual happiness we get from being in communion with others, but we don't do the work to maintain those friendships, then the chances are we're not actually going to receive that friendship. It might be lasting for a moment, but then it disappears. And so you're right, we have friends that have lasted since childhood, but usually our longest and most deepest friendships are ones that we've invested time and energy in. Never mind from a spiritual point of view, just a worldly point of view. Think of the people that you're best friends with, right? You have invested emotional and spiritual labor into that friendship. You've done work to make that friendship have some sort of sustenance. So then if you go through a difficult time or your friend goes through a difficult time, it doesn't destroy the friendship. Even if you act out of turn or you misbehave or do something, the friendship has a basis, right? A foundation that it can recover from. But you've done the work for that to be there. Yet most of our friendships aren't like that. Most of our friendships, here it's saying, our self-cherishing mind, if it's only focused on me, it's what can I get from you? What can I extract from this friendship? So we look at others not as how can I have a mutually beneficial relationship with you, but what can I take from you? And we call that friendship, but that's not real friendship, right? So you're correct, Badvi, in that we have friendships that last, and some of them may not be healthy. They may be friendships where we are harmful or the other person's harmful, and yet that friendship does last. So we do have examples of that. But think of all the friends we have and how many of them are good friends and how many of them would, we often say, like, if we have a different like tier of friend, how many of them are willing to help you move, and how many of them are willing to like sit with you if you're grieving the loss of a parent, and how many of them are willing to go out to coffee with you when you're upset. Like, those are different levels of tier. Like, anyone's willing to go get a coffee with you, or maybe go to the movies with you, go to a bar. But then the next level is, but they're willing to actually spend their weekend helping you move to a new house. That's like the middle level tier. Or they're willing to sit with you in discomfort and pain and grief when you suffer the loss. That's like a higher level tier, right? So we have different levels of friendship in just a worldly sense. So how many people do you have that are that high level tier? Not many. If you think of your whole life, how many people who you've had a relationship with, most of them are going to be mere acquaintances who don't last, right? And that's because, there are many worldly reasons that may be contributing to that, but ultimately, when friendships don't last, it's because one or both people that are part of that relationship are seeking out how to extract happiness for themselves. And that relationship is only a means to fulfill their own self-cherishing mind, not to actually be in a mutual communion with others. And then the second thing mentioned in this verse, which is maybe where we'll end it today, is we are filled with desire for food and fine clothing, yet we fail to earn them, so we steal and we scheme, right? So this is showing that we're willing to be fickle. We're willing to seek out the people that praise us, that flatter us. That's what the first line is telling us. And when we don't get what we want, we're willing to resort to deceit and to engaging in non-virtue because we want worldly happiness. We don't understand that worldly happiness is only suffering, and therefore we'll do anything we can to achieve that worldly happiness, even if that is engaging in more non-virtue to receive it, right? So we steal, we scheme, we are deceptive, we harm others, all to amass worldly delight, which is itself a type of suffering because it's impermanent, it's not going to last, and as long as we cling to it as if it were real happiness, it's not bringing us any satisfaction, right? So it's like layering one level of suffering or one level of negativity on top of another. And so the self-cherishing mind does for us. The self-cherishing mind encourages us to be fickle. It encourages us to be deceptive. It encourages us to seek out to use negative means to achieve worldly ends. Of course, negative means can only achieve worldly ends, right? A negative means cannot achieve a spiritual end. But this is the self-cherishing mind tells you that it's appropriate, that it's helpful. So we can see what these verses are doing, what this section of the text is doing, is pointing at our actual actions, right? So it is turned the spotlight not on our experiences of suffering, right? Because the first section, if I were to just jump to another verse, right? So verse 25, when all of those who are close to us turn against us as enemies, this is the wheel of sharp weapons returning, right? So that's showing a circumstance, that's showing an experience, that's showing a type of suffering we experience in the world now. That's what the whole first section was doing. Now, instead of highlighting those experiences of suffering, it's pointing the finger at us and saying all those experiences, this is the cause. Because your self-cherishing has allowed you to indulge in laziness. It has caused you to be fickle. It has caused you to be deceitful. It has caused you to indulge in your ignorance, right? And for me, this is the kind of mind tuning teaching that is really effective because it doesn't give you any place to hide, right? Your ego has no place to hide when it says, look, you have these great hopes of having, speedy attainment, of achieving some sort of realization in your meditation practice and also in your like academic studies. You have all these hopes. Yeah, what effort do you do? Do you do the work to actually achieve those things, or do you just hope that they're going to happen on their own, right? You don't put in the effort, yet you want the result. So having that finger pointed right at me is really helpful for me personally, That's how the mind training teachings cut right to the heart of my ego, right to the heart of my self-cherishing mind. And it doesn't give you any wiggle room. Now, of course, when you look at these verses, you're not going to recognize yourself in every single one, right? A lot of them, you'll be able to say, I don't do that. That isn't a way the self-cherishing mind affects me. And that's great. That's an opportunity to rejoice. If you say, that's not something I do, I already, whether it by my instinct, whether it by my karma, whether it be an intentional practice that I've taken up as I engage in the teachings of the Buddha, I don't do that. The self-cherishing mind can't trap me in that way because I've already defeated it, right? So there's also an opportunity when we see some of these verses and we say, that doesn't apply to me. That's great. That's wonderful. That's an opportunity to rejoice. So the whole teaching isn't about beating ourselves up, right? You have to remember, especially with mind training teachings like this, the point of them is not about self-deprecation. It's not about what an awful person I am, how horrible it is that I have a self-cherishing mind and I cause harm to myself and others. That's not the point. We're suffering samsaric beings. The reason we're here is because we have self-grasping that serves as the root of our birth and samsara over and over again. And the reason we experience suffering is because of our self-cherishing mind. This is identifying that. It's not blaming us. It's not making us feel guilty. It's identifying what the actual cause of our unhappiness is. And it's doing it in a very forceful way because we have followed our self-cherishing mind around for countless lives. And so sometimes you need to be forceful to really identify how you are engaging in this harmful behavior, right? To shake us free from it. So there's no judgment in these verses. There's no blame. There's no self-deprecation saying I'm a bad person. I'm an awful person because I see myself engaging in these things. That's not the point. That's not useful. Okay? The Dharma is all about transforming our mind in such a way that we can have a better understanding of the world around us, the better understanding of how we fit in the world, and we can engage in more virtuous behavior that allows us to be of better service to others. That's the point of the Dharma. We transform our mind. By transforming our mind, we transform our actions. By transforming our actions, we transform the world around us. Okay? All towards being free from suffering. All transformations are moving in that direction. So the point of mind training isn't to say to beat ourselves up, but it's to actually identify the enemy, which is self-cherishing. Because it's so easy to not look at the way we grasp onto our ego, the way we feed our self-cherishing mind. It's really easy to avoid that and make excuses for ourselves. We've been doing it for so long that it's second nature to make these kind of excuses. And this kind of teaching is doing its best to pull the rug out from under us and saying, you can't make those excuses anymore, right? Doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you're to blame. It means that now that you know who the enemy is, I'm giving you the tools to encourage you and embolden you to actually defeat that enemy, to not be trapped by that enemy any longer. So I think that's a good place to end.
Venerable,
Okay.
I have a small doubt. Now, when you're looking at these verses, okay, you say, fine, I don't do this, but somebody else does it to me. How do I counter that notion?
Like what?
Like, you realize that there are certain people who are presumably acting it out and you can see it. How do you respond to something like that? I mean, it is a type of judgment that you are having, not about yourself, but about somebody else.
I see.
But that also comes from a self-cherishing mind, isn't it? When you're looking at blaming somebody else other than you, it's also self-cherishing. So how do you counter that?
Well, there's a difference between blaming someone and recognizing the cause of suffering, right? So when we see someone engaging in harmful activity that's causing harm to themselves or to others, we can recognize the way that their self-cherishing mind is causing that or is propelling them to engage in harm. We can recognize the way their afflictions are causing them to or propelling them towards harmful activity. By recognizing that, we blame the afflictions. We don't blame that person. We say it's due to their misunderstanding of the nature of reality. It's due to their own suffering that they are causing suffering for others. It's due to their ignorance and their misunderstanding of what is real happiness and what is suffering, and that they grab on to suffering as if it were happiness, that they're going about achieving happiness in all the wrong ways. That is what we're blaming. We're not blaming the individuals, right? Because the fact that they're doing it in this life and not us, or not as much of us as we are, or whatever it may be, that is just due to circumstance. Okay? So we don't, the important thing really, so that's one thing, right? When we blame others, we realize that if we're blaming them for our own unhappiness, then we're always missing the mark because there's only one enemy to blame for our unhappiness. Now, difficult circumstances may make our unhappiness, the difficulties of our lives more manifest. That's true. And there may be individuals who are directly related to those difficult circumstances. That's possible as well. Yet, ultimately, our actual unhappiness or our happiness comes from us, comes from our mind. We created the karma that would ripen as our experience this particular suffering right now, whether it be the suffering of poverty, the suffering of discrimination, the suffering of whatever it is. That is all the ripening of karma that we created in the past due to our own negative actions. So we have created the causes that we have created the causes to experience whatever we're experiencing now, and are grasping onto those experiences as if they were causeless, and then allowing them to create more mental anguish. That's also us, our action. And our belief that my happiness is more important than yours exacerbates our experiences of suffering and of difficult circumstances. So the only one to blame for our unhappiness and for our suffering is ourselves, even if there are other people engaging in harmful action directly related to us. Right? So that's the first thing. The second thing, especially in mind training, is they say it's far more valuable to find a single fault in your own behavior than it is to find 1,000 faults in another person's behavior. Even if you're true and accurate in assessing someone else's behavior, that doesn't change your mind. It doesn't make you become closer to becoming a Buddha, right? They say that the faults of others are like grains of sand in your hand, and the faults of yourself should be like a grain of sand in your eye. A single grain of sand in your eye should cause you much more displeasure than 1,000 of them that are piled up in your hand. There's no benefit to you to look at others' faults, but there's infinite benefit at analyzing your own faults, because then you can do something about them, right? So analyzing others' faults, pointing out others' faults, isn't a useful spiritual exercise. It's only causing you to fixate on others and ignoring the own causes of suffering that you create. So those are the two mind training ways to understand that, right? We put the blame on, there's a single point upon which we put all of our blame, and that's a self-cherishing mind. Recognizing the faults of others brings no benefit to our lives and no happiness. Now, we can say that we can see others engaging in harmful actions and identify that it is due to their own afflictions. And that can be useful for us because it helps us develop compassion towards them. Because if we want to develop bodhicitta, which is the ultimate antidote to the self-cherishing mind, we have to have great compassion. Great compassion isn't compassion for the people we like or the sentient beings that are nice to us. Great compassion is compassion for all sentient beings equally, without discrimination. We have to hope that all sentient beings can be free from every suffering and the causes of suffering. We have to have great love, that which is every single sentient being is happy and has all the causes of happiness, including those sentient beings who are actively causing harm right now in my life and in others' lives. So if we're busy pointing out their faults and laying blame on them, that is anathema to developing great compassion and great love. Yet, if we see how their harmful actions are motivated by their own suffering, by their own afflictions, then we recognize that in the harm that they perpetuate, they are both experiencing suffering and causing this, planting the seeds for future suffering. And that becomes a cause for our compassion, or makes it easier for us to develop compassion in relationship to those harmful sentient beings. So the only time it's useful to identify or put blame, quote unquote, on others is only to help us generate stronger minds of compassion toward their suffering. That's how it is useful. Otherwise, you're just sidestepping the real enemy, which is the self-cherishing mind. And this came up a lot when we talked about karma, and in general, it's true that difficult circumstances cause us to experience suffering differently, right? The people that are living in Gaza right now, or the people that are living in Iran right now, are experiencing suffering that is much more egregious than what I'm experiencing due to their circumstances being so catastrophic, right? That's true. That's 100% true. Your external circumstances and obstacles make it much easier to experience suffering, okay? So there's no denying that. But what the Dharma teaches us is those two things, that our experiences of these external conditions, one, are the result of negative karma we've created in the past. Therefore, we have some ownership over it. It isn't just arbitrary. And two, more important than those external circumstances is how we relate to those external circumstances, because that's where our true happiness or suffering comes from. Our true sadness or joy comes from the way we relate to our external circumstances, no matter how polished or how difficult they may be. So it's not denying the fact that external circumstances aren't the same for every single sentient being, and that different sentient beings have many more opportunities to experience course-worthy suffering than others. It's not ignoring that. It's just putting it in context, right? Okay, I think I hope that is helpful. Any other questions?
Yes,
Okay.
Venerable.
Oh,
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for your teachings, so precious again. I wonder if there is a specific meditation practice to extinguish this so harmful self-searching mind. Some meditation techniques specific to unbuild this so harmful mind.
So there are obviously many different ones we can do. The one that is most common is what we call tonglen, so giving and taking, right? So engaging in the practice of actively wishing to experience others' suffering, to take it away from them, to take their suffering upon yourself, and to give away all of your happiness to others. So there's many different levels of this type of practice, and we can apply it to specific circumstances or to in general, right? So there's different ways to engage in what's called tonglen, or giving and taking meditation, but that is the heart of the heart of mind training meditation, is to use tonglen. So to actively visualize yourself taking the suffering, the pain, the misery, the difficulties of others, taking that, allowing it to be absorbed into your body, allowing that pain, that misery, that heartbreak to then destroy your self-cherishing mind, to beat upon your ego like, waves crashing upon a shore that slowly erode the dark core of your self-cherishing mind. And as you take their suffering away from them, you give them every experience of happiness that you have. You don't hoard your own happiness. You don't hoard your experiences of joy or delight, but you wish that you could give them away, right? So that is one of the fundamental meditation practices that helps our mind become more aligned with cherishing others more than ourselves. It helps defeat our self-cherishing mind in that way. The active mind, the active wish to take on suffering and to give away happiness. So that is one of the primary meditations, and there are many, you can find many different Lojong, Tonglen give and take instructions online as well, that you can apply them in a general way or in a specific way to different circumstances. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. There are other meditations as well, but that is one of the main ones.
Yes, I know some. Some is very difficult to do. We need practice.
Yeah, we need practice. The thing about Tonglen is that the more you do it, the deeper it gets. So when you start it, it may feel just like you're pretending. You are just, saying the words, but it's not really affecting your heart. But you go through the practice, you do the visualizations, you try to really encourage it. And the more you do that, then it becomes deeper and deeper and deeper. And you feel or experience greater levels of transformation the more you do it. So as with most meditation, it builds on itself, right? So the nice thing about Tonlen is getting into it, beginning the practice is really easy, right? It's not complicated. And then the more you do it, you'll reap greater rewards, or have the potential to. Where you're right. Other practices sometimes are more complicated. That's true.
Yes, I understand. We embody more and more. We go in this travel deeper.
Okay. Okay, I think that's a good place to end it then. Thank you, Alejandro. So let's recognize that our study of this text today together are spending time focusing on the teachings of the Buddha, trying to learn them, understand them, contemplate them, develop new techniques that allow us to meditate on them and integrate them into our lives. This has resulted in us accumulating some merit, some good karma, some virtue. And instead of keeping that for ourselves, we generate the mind that wishes to give that away, that it may ripen on all sentient beings. May our merit ripen on all suffering sentient beings, that they might be free from all suffering of body and mind. May all those who have passed away quickly achieve perfect human rebirth and meet with Mahayana spiritual friends. And may all those who are suffering in any state of being quickly receive freedom from that suffering. May all of their wishes be fulfilled in accordance with the Dharma. And may we ourselves quickly and more quickly develop realizations on the path to Buddhahood and Buddhahood itself, so that we might be of more benefit to other sentient beings. Let our good merit, whatever we've accumulated today, ripen in that way, in our quick achievement of Buddhahood for the benefit of others. So with that, we'll just offer these dedication prayers. The first one we will do once in Tibetan and then once in English. And then we will offer the short, long life prayer for His Holiness and the prayer that spontaneously fulfills all wishes in English as well. Janshu sem chorim poche ma ke panam ke gyochik ke wanyam pa me bayan gone gondu pewar shok. May the supreme jewel of bodhicitta that is not arisen arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good, all-powerful Chenrezig, Tenzin Gyatso. Please remain until samsara ends. Savior of the snowland teachings and transmigratory beings who make extremely clear the path that is the unification of emptiness and compassion, to the lotus holder, Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. May the glorious Guru's lives be long and stable. May all beings equal in the extent of space have happiness. May I and others without exception accumulate merit and purify negativities. And may we be blessed to quickly attain Buddhahood. Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for spending your Saturday evening with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Venerable, for coming and teaching us. Tomorrow morning, we have Venerable again online, teaching Acharya Shantideva's A Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life. Also, Venerable, can I make the announcement now?
Sure, but let's first make the announcement that next Saturday, there is a Lama Chopa, a Guru Puja offering at the center in place of class, because it is a Tsokte. It is the 10th of the Tibetan month. So there will be a puja instead of class. Everyone's welcome to join us in person. If you're coming in person, we encourage you to bring offerings for the altar of food or of lights or of incense. And if you're joining us online, then we also encourage you to make offerings at your own altar. So it will be streamed. It's not going to be recorded, but it'll be streamed. So there's no Wheeler Sharp Weapons class next Saturday. In place, there will be a Guru Puja Sok offering. So let's announce that first. And then the other big announcement, Deepti?
Yes, Venerable. So we are very happy to share that on the 23rd to 26th of April, between that, we are having a Lojong mind training retreat at the Seraja Monastery campus. It will be led by Venerable, and it will be based on the Wheel of Sharp Weapons by Acharya Dharma Rakshita. And we will be doing a deep immersive, will be immersive sessions, 2 full day and 2 half-day sessions. And if anybody can come in, it doesn't matter if they are beginners or advanced students. They want to understand their mind and study and learn. This is the best way to start. And all foreign nationals who wish to attend will have to apply for a PAP or a protected area permit to come to the monastery. The monastery is about 1.5 day. I mean, it's about 4 to 5 hour trip from Bangalore to Seraje. And we'll tell you about the transportation and all that. It's a very wonderful opportunity, and I feel everybody should just make the time and attend. So there'll be details coming in the next few hours. So please wait for them.
Thank you so much, Deepti. Yes, we're very excited to be able to offer another retreat here at Sarah. In the past, CKSL has done retreats at Gyume, right? Which is a very nice space. It's a little closer to Bangalore than Sarah. Not much, but it's kind of in between. But right now, this is very difficult for me to spend 4 days away from Sarah J. So doing the retreats here at Sarah J gives CKSL members a chance to visit Sarah J, which is really wonderful. It creates great imprints and also makes it a little easier on me. And it also means that there are some other monks here who may be able to help lead a session now and then. So I appreciate that we get a chance to have these retreats here at Sarah J. So thank you, Deepti, for organizing this. I look forward to it. And I look forward to seeing all of you either tomorrow or next week or sometime soon. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys. Thank you all for coming. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Dee. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.